Hey guys, tonight we're taking a deep dive into something you probably haven't thought much about. What royalty smelled like 2,000 years ago. Imagine walking through a department store today. You glide past the makeup counters, trying to avoid eye contact with the overly enthusiastic staff. But it's no use. Someone with a tiny, gleaming bottle approaches, and before you can politely decline, you're enveloped in a synthetic cloud of celebrity-endorsed despair. It's a mix of aggressive florals and something vaguely described as musk, and it clings to you for the rest of the day. If you think a spritz of ocean breeze is a lot, you definitely wouldn't have survived the ancient world's personal care routines. I'm talking crocodile dung sunscreen. Yeah, suddenly, that aggressive salesperson doesn't seem so bad, do they? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I love reading where you're all listening from, so feel free to drop your city and the time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see our little community of sleepy history buffs spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The harsh lights of the modern world fade away, and the sharp, chemical scents dissolve into nothing. You are now adrift, not on a sea, but on a river. The river, the Nile. Your vessel is a simple, long-hulled boat, its wooden planks creaking a gentle, rhythmic lullaby with every slow pull of the oars. You are not in the Egypt of postcards, with the great pyramids of Giza looming in the hazy distance. You have traveled much farther south, past Thebes, past the first great cataract, and into a land the Egyptians called Ta Seti, the land of the bow. This is Nubia, the kingdom of Kush. The air here is different. It's warm, but not oppressive, and carries the rich, loamy scent of the fertile black earth deposited by the river's annual flood. You trail your fingers in the cool, dark water, watching it ripple away in perfect, silvery lines under a sky impossibly vast and crowded with stars. There is no light pollution here, no distant hum of traffic, only the whisper of the breeze through the tall reeds along the bank, the occasional, lonely call of an ibis, and the soft, percussive splash of the oars. You are drifting backwards in time, to a period around the 1st century BC. Your guide, a quiet man with skin the color of polished mahogany, points to the east. You see nothing but the rolling, amber-colored hills of the desert meeting the vibrant green of the river valley. But he knows, as his ancestors knew, that this river is the artery of a great civilization. For centuries, the relationship between Kush and Egypt was a complex dance of power, trade, and shared gods. Historians still gently debate the tone of this ancient relationship. Was it the resentment of the colonized, the rivalry of powerful siblings, or a fluid exchange of culture? The truth, as always, is probably a complicated mix of all three. There was a time, a glorious period known as the 25th dynasty, when the Kushite kings sat on the throne of Egypt itself, ruling as the Black Pharaohs, commissioning temples and restoring ancient traditions with a piety that impressed even the Egyptians. But that time has passed. Egypt is now a province of an ambitious, sprawling power from across the Mediterranean called Rome, the center of Kushite power. In a shrewd political move, shifted even farther south centuries ago, to a place of greater safety and immense natural wealth. That is where you are headed. The city of Meroë. As the boat rounds a wide, lazy bend in the river, the landscape begins to change. The reeds grow thicker, and you can see groves of acacia trees and date palms. You glide past small fishing villages, where the silhouettes of round, thatch-roofed huts stand against the deep purple of the twilight sky. The smell of wood smoke and roasting fish drifts across the water, a comforting, domestic scent. This journey is not a race, it is a slow, deliberate immersion. It's the ancient equivalent of a long road trip. But instead of rest stops with questionable coffee, you have the entire, living ecosystem of the Nile. Instead of billboards, you have clusters of domed granaries and the distant, lowing calls of cattle being brought in for the night. The stars are brighter now. A brilliant, glittering canopy. You can make out constellations with a clarity that feels profound. This is the same sky the Kandakes, the powerful queens of Kush, would have looked upon. They would have seen the same celestial patterns, sought guidance from the same stars. Their power wasn't just political, it was divine. rooted in this very land. This river, these stars, and their authority was expressed not only in the temples they built or the armies they commanded, but in the very scents they wore. Perfume, for them, wasn't a luxury. It was a language, a tool of diplomacy, a sacred offering, and a shield of personal power. The recipes were secrets, passed down from mother to daughter, from one queen to the next. They were formulas born from this river, this desert, and the far-flung trade routes that all converged here, in the heart of Kush. Your slow journey up the Nile is the first step in understanding that alchemy. You are not just traveling to a city, you're traveling to the source of the ingredients, to the very beginning of a forgotten scent. And as you finally drift off to sleep on the gently rocking boat, the first faint outline of a pyramid, steeper and more slender than its Egyptian cousins, appears on the horizon. A dark triangle against a sea of stars. You stir as the first rays of sunlight warm your face, the gentle rocking of the boat having lulled you into a deep and restful sleep. The air is still cool from the night, but it's no longer just the scent of river and earth. There's something else now, a faint, sharp, and metallic tang carried on the breeze, like the smell of a distant forge or the air after a lightning strike. You sit up, your blanket falling into your lap, and look towards the shore. The city is no longer a dark silhouette. It is revealed in the soft, golden light of dawn. Meroë. From the river, your first impression is still of the pyramids. They stand in a cluster on a low hill to the east. A royal necropolis. They are smaller, more sharply angled than their famous cousins in Giza, like a collection of stone spearheads aimed at the sky. But as your boat draws closer to the city's main landing, you notice something else, something far stranger. Great, dark mounds, almost like small, black hills, rise near the city's edge. They glitter in the morning sun, not with the sparkle of mica or crystal, but with a hard, industrial sheen. These are the slag heaps of Meroë. For centuries, this city was one of the most important centers of iron production in the ancient world. A veritable engine of metallurgy. It's like the entire civilization had a side hustle as a blacksmith. And it got a little out of hand. These mountains of industrial waste are a testament to the city's immense wealth and power. The silent, dark twin to its gleaming gold. Your boat glides to a dock made of thick, wooden planks. As you step onto solid ground, the sounds of the city wash over you. It's not the chaotic roar of Rome or Alexandria. It's a more measured, rhythmic energy. You can hear the distant, steady clang, clang, clang of hammers on anvils from the smelting district. A constant, industrial heartbeat. You hear the murmur of voices speaking a language you don't recognize. Its cadences rising and falling like music. You see people moving through the wide, unpaved streets. Merchants in long, white robes leading donkeys laden with amphorae. Artisans with clay-dusted hands and paint-stained tunics. Priests, shaven-headed and serene, walking towards the temple enclosures, and soldiers carrying distinctive shields of stretched animal hide. It's the ancient world's equivalent of an international airport terminal, just with more sandals and a noticeable lack of charging ports. You begin to walk, leaving the industrial scent of the forges behind and moving deeper into the city's core. The architecture is a fascinating blend. The common houses are circular, built from mud, brick and timber with conical thatched roofs, deeply rooted in African tradition. But as you approach the central districts, you see grander, rectangular buildings made of fired red brick, a technique likely learned from Roman Egypt. It's a city that is confident in its own identity, yet open to borrowing a good idea when it sees one. You notice the people's skin gleams with scented oils, a far more pleasant alternative, you suspect, to that crocodile-based sunblock popular up north. Then, you turn a corner and the ambient soundscape changes. The industrial clang fades, replaced by a profound, respectful quiet. You have reached the sacred precinct. Before you stands the great temple of Amun. While not as monstrously large as the temple at Karnak, it possesses its own unique, powerful beauty. The sandstone pylons of the entrance are covered in vibrant, painted reliefs. You see images of the ram-headed god Amun, but here he is depicted alongside the lion-headed god Aphrodite, a purely Kushite deity of war and victory. The art style is a mesmerizing fusion. The postures and proportions have an Egyptian echo. But the faces, the jewelry, the crowns, they are all distinctly Nubian. Gold leaf, applied with painstaking care, glints on the tips of an obelisk and along the edges of the gateway, catching the sun and making the entrance seem to ripple with divine light. This is the gold to the city's iron, the spiritual wealth that complements its industrial might. As you walk along the temple's outer wall, you see inscriptions carved into the stone. The letters are unfamiliar, an elegant alphabet of birds, stylized eyes, and geometric shapes. This is the Meroitic script. And here lies one of history's most fascinating and quietest mysteries. Scholars, through decades of patient work, have successfully deciphered the script. They know the phonetic value of each letter. They can sound out the words, but they don't know what most of the words mean. Only a handful of terms, names, titles, and a few common nouns are understood. To stand before these walls is to look at a story you can read aloud, but whose plot remains a complete secret. It's the ultimate linguistic cliffhanger, left for us by a civilization with a great sense of long-term dramatic tension. Historians, armed with ground-penetrating radar and old-fashioned patience, still gently argue about the precise layout of the city, where the royal palace truly ended and the elite residences began, or how the water from the Nile was channeled to the sprawling royal gardens. But what is certain is that the city was zoned. There was a place for industry, a place for commerce, a place for the gods, and somewhere, shielded from the smoke of the forges and the noise of the market, was the domain of the Kandake, a place of quiet power, serene courtyards, and, most importantly for our journey, hidden workshops where the most sacred scents on earth were born. Your feet, seemingly of their own accord, begin to lead you away from the grand public temple and towards a more secluded, walled enclosure, a place where the air smells not of iron or incense, but of flowers and sweet resins. You pass through an unassuming gateway in a high mud brick wall, leaving the low hum of the city behind. The sound dampens immediately, as if you've put on a pair of noise-canceling headphones. The air inside this enclosure feels cooler, more serene. This is the royal compound, a sprawling complex of palaces, residences, and administrative buildings. It's less a single, monolithic building and more like a small, self-contained village dedicated to the machinery of the monarchy. But the person at the very center of this machine, the one who holds ultimate authority, is not a king. Here in Meroë, you answer to the queen. You walk down a long, colonnaded corridor. The columns are not the monumental stone pillars of the Amun temple, but are made of plaster-covered wood, painted with vibrant geometric patterns and spiraling vines. Sunlight filters through latticed windows high above, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the polished clay floor. You see scribes hurrying past, their arms full of papyrus scrolls, their faces etched with the concentration of people who definitely don't want to make a typo on a royal decree. You see servants carrying trays of dates and figs, and you catch the glint of intricate gold jewelry on the wrists and necks of courtiers engaged in quiet, serious conversation. This is the nerve center of the Kushite kingdom. At the heart of this power structure is a figure known as the Kandake. This is the Meroitic word for queen mother or great woman, and the Romans, who would later clash with one of these formidable rulers, would corrupt the name into Candace, thinking it was a personal name rather than a dynastic title. The Kandake was the ultimate authority. While she often ruled alongside a son or husband, historians still debate the precise balance of power. Was the king a co-regent, or was he more of a consort? His power secondary to hers? The reliefs and inscriptions seem to suggest the latter. In the iconography of Kush, the Kandake is often shown as the larger, more dominant figure, depicted with a powerful, stocky build that celebrated strength and fertility, a stark contrast to the slender, idealized forms of Egyptian queens like Nefertiti. She was no delicate flower, she was the foundation of the state. Her power was not just political, it was profoundly spiritual. The line of succession was matrilineal, meaning the right to rule passed through the queen's bloodline. She was the vessel of divine legitimacy. You see this reflected in a carving on a nearby wall. It depicts a Kandake, identifiable by her unique crown adorned with the ram's horns of Amun, making an offering directly to the gods. There is no male intermediary. She is the high priestess, the direct link between the mortal realm and the divine. This gave her an authority that was absolute and unchallengeable. To disobey the Kandake was not just treason, it was blasphemy. It's like being the Pope and the Queen of England rolled into one person. But with better jewelry and the command of an army famed for its archers. You see a small group of envoys from a desert tribe being led towards the throne room. They walk with a mixture of awe and trepidation. They are here to negotiate trade rights for the salt caravans. And they know that the woman they are about to meet holds the fate of their entire livelihood in her hands. She could grant them favorable terms, enriching their tribe for a generation. Or she could impose a heavy tax that would cripple them. Her decisions would ripple out from this quiet, sun-dappled compound to affect people hundreds of miles away. One of the most famous Kandakes, Amanirenas, would later lead her armies against the encroaching Roman Empire. When the Romans tried to impose taxes on her kingdom, she didn't just send a strongly worded letter. She rode south, captured 3 major Roman cities, and, in a moment of sublime, symbolic defiance, tore the head from a bronze statue of the Emperor Augustus, carried it back to Meroë, and buried it beneath the steps of a temple dedicated to victory. This meant that every single person who entered the temple would literally be walking over, or stomping on, the face of the Roman emperor. It was an act of psychological warfare so brilliantly audacious. It's a wonder it hasn't been made into a movie. This is the kind of person you're dealing with. She was not someone you trifled with. But power, especially in the ancient world, wasn't just about armies and edicts. It was about presentation, about creating an aura of divinity that set you apart from ordinary mortals. And a key part of that aura was scent. The Kandake's perfume was not just a cosmetic. It was a statement. It was a signature, an invisible crown that announced her presence before she even entered a room. The recipe for this scent was one of the most closely guarded secrets of the state. As important as the location of the royal gold mines. And as you continue your walk through the palace grounds, you are being led towards the very place where this fragrant power was created, the Queen's personal perfume workshop. A place more secret than the treasury and more sacred than the throne room. You follow your silent guide away from the administrative heart of the royal compound. Turning down a narrower, more private pathway, the air here is noticeably sweeter. The path is lined with flowering bushes you don't recognize, their blossoms releasing a gentle, honeyed fragrance into the warm air. You've left the world of politics and entered the world of the senses. The corridor opens into a small, sun-drenched courtyard, at the center of which is a single, perfectly still pool of water reflecting the brilliant blue sky. The only sound is the low, contented buzzing of bees flitting among the flowers. This is an oasis of calm within the larger oasis of the palace. On the far side of the courtyard stands a modest, single-story building. It has no grand entrance. No imposing columns. Its walls are smooth, whitewashed plaster, and the doorway is covered not by a heavy wooden door, but by a simple curtain of woven reeds that rustles softly in the breeze. This is it, the royal perfume workshop. Its unassuming exterior is the perfect camouflage. No one would guess that within these 4 walls, the liquid essence of Kushite power is distilled. It's like discovering that the Coca-Cola secret formula is kept in a garden shed. Your guide holds back the reed curtain for you, and you step inside. Your eyes take a moment to adjust to the cool, dim interior. The light is soft, filtered through high, narrow windows that prevent the harsh sun from entering and spoiling the delicate ingredients within. The air is thick with a complex symphony of scents. It's not overpowering or cloying, like a modern perfume hall. It's a rich, layered aroma, the deep, earthy smell of dried roots and resins, the sweet perfume of flower petals, the sharp, clean scent of spices, and a warm, almost buttery undertone from fragrant oils. It smells ancient, sacred, and profoundly calming. The workshop is a single, large room. It is meticulously clean and organized. Along one wall, you see shelves made of dark, polished wood. On these shelves are dozens of clay jars, each one sealed with a beeswax stopper and marked with a single Meroitic symbol. These jars hold the precious raw ingredients, kept cool and in darkness. On another wall, tools hang from wooden pegs, small, finely woven sieves made of horsehair, delicate bronze funnels, long, slender glass rods for stirring, and a set of gleaming copper spoons and ladles. It has the quiet, focused atmosphere of a laboratory, but the aesthetic of an artist's studio. In the center of the room are several low, smooth stone tables. On one of these tables, a woman is working. She is not the Kandake herself, but one of her trusted perfumers. A woman who has likely inherited this role and its secrets through her own family line. She doesn't look up as you enter, she is completely absorbed in her task. She is grinding something in a heavy, shallow bowl made of dark gray basalt. Her movements are slow, deliberate, and rhythmic, a gentle, circular motion of a stone pestle against the bowl. The sound is soft and meditative, a gentle shush 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 that is the only percussion in the room's quiet symphony. This place is a sanctuary. It's a space where science and magic blur. The creation of perfume here is not a commercial enterprise. It's a sacred art, a form of alchemy. The perfumer is not just mixing ingredients. She is coaxing the ba, the spirit or essence, out of each plant, resin, and flower. The final product is not merely for adornment. It will be used to anoint the Kandake before she holds court, to consecrate the statues of the gods in the great temple, to create a tangible link between the human and the divine. The scents created here are prayers made manifest. You notice that there are no written recipes anywhere. No scrolls of papyrus lie open on the tables. The formulas are not written down, they are memorized, passed from master to apprentice through years of silent observation and hands-on practice. To write them down would be to risk them being stolen by a rival kingdom or a disgruntled courtier. It's a level of security that makes modern data encryption seem rather quaint. Historians still speculate on the exact composition of these royal perfumes, piecing together clues from archaeological finds, pollen analysis from ancient vessels, trace residues of resins, and mentions in Egyptian and Roman texts. But the full, nuanced recipes are lost to time, a secret kept perfectly by the women who worked in rooms just like this one. You think of the complex chemistry and precise measurements involved in modern perfumery, with its gas chromatographs and molecular analysis. And then you look at this woman, using her senses, her intuition, and generations of accumulated knowledge to achieve a result that was just as, if not more, potent. She can tell by the texture of the ground resin, the specific hue of an infused oil, the way a scent changes with the addition of a single drop of flower water, whether the perfume is balanced. It's a skill that is both incredibly sophisticated and profoundly simple. Before you can learn to create the final product, you must first learn to understand the soul of each ingredient. And your first task, you sense, will not be at this grinding stone, but outside, back by the banks of the great river where this whole journey began. You must go and gather the gifts of the Nile. The perfumer finally looks up, her gaze calm and steady. She doesn't speak, but with a slight nod of her head, she directs you towards a collection of baskets near the doorway. You understand, your apprenticeship has begun. You pick up one of the baskets. Its woven palm fibers smooth and cool against your fingers, and step back out into the sun-drenched courtyard, leaving the sacred, scented dimness of the workshop behind. You are being sent on an errand, the most basic and fundamental task of any perfumer, gathering the raw materials. You make your way out of the royal compound, your basket feeling light and purposeful on your arm. You walk back through the city streets, but this time you see them with a new focus. You're not just a passive observer anymore, you are a forager, a collector. You walk past the market, where merchants are selling mounds of bright red chili peppers and baskets of dried hibiscus flowers for making the popular sweet, sharp tea known as carcade. You are tempted, but you know these are not the ingredients you seek. The Queen's perfume requires components that are not bought and sold so openly. They must be gathered with intention, from specific places at specific times. Your path leads you back to the lifeblood of this land, the Nile. You leave the dusty streets of Meroë behind and walk towards the fertile green belt that hugs the river's edge. The air becomes humid, thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying vegetation, a rich, primal scent that is the foundation of all life here. You are entering the Queen's private gardens, a cultivated wilderness that stretches along the riverbank. This is not a formal garden like the geometric, orderly gardens of Rome. It is a more natural, managed ecosystem, a place where valuable plants are encouraged to grow in their preferred habitats. It's like a community garden, but the community is the royal family. And instead of slightly misshapen tomatoes, you're harvesting the building blocks of divine fragrance. Your first target is a plant growing in the shallow, Still waters at the very edge of the river. The blue lotus, its scientific name, Nymphaea caerulea, doesn't do it justice. To the ancients, this flower was pure magic. You wade a few steps into the cool, muddy water, the soft silt squishing between your toes. You see them floating on the water's surface. Their vibrant blue to violet petals a startling splash of color against the green lily pads. The flower has a delicate, almost ethereal scent, sweet and slightly intoxicating. The Egyptians famously associated it with creation and rebirth. As the flower closes its petals at night and sinks underwater, only to rise and bloom again with the morning sun. It was also known for its gentle psychoactive properties, often infused in wine to create a relaxing, euphoric state. Historians still discuss whether its primary use was for its scent or its subtle mind-altering effects. Perhaps the two were never truly separated. You carefully pluck several of the freshest blossoms, their stems dripping cool river water into your basket. You handle them gently, as their petals are as delicate as butterfly wings. Next, you move away from the water's edge and into a dense thicket of tall, green stalks, reeds. They might seem mundane, but to a perfumer, they are essential. You are looking for a specific type, a chorus calamus, or sweet flag. You identify it not by sight, but by breaking off a small piece of a root-like rhizome near the base. A powerful, spicy sweet, and wonderfully fresh aroma fills the air. It's a clean, invigorating scent, a perfect counterpoint to the dreamy sweetness of the lotus. You use a small, curved knife to carefully dig up a few sections of the rhizome, shaking off the dark, rich soil before placing them in your basket. This ingredient will be dried and ground, adding a sharp, bright top note to the perfume, cutting through the heavier scents of the resins. Your final task in this part of the garden is to collect a less glamorous, but equally important, material. You find a grove of acacia trees, the same kind that provides the hard wood used for tools and furniture. But you are interested in the tree's sap, where the bark has been damaged. A thick, amber-colored resin has oozed out and hardened into glassy beads. This is gum arabic. It has almost no scent of its own, but it is an essential fixative. In the world of perfumery, a fixative is a substance that helps the more volatile scents last longer, preventing them from evaporating too quickly. It's the ancient equivalent of a cosmetic setting spray. It's the unsung hero of the fragrance world, doing its crucial work without asking for any of the glory. You carefully pry the hard, golden tears of resin from the bark, each one making a satisfying little tink as it drops into your basket. You stand up and look at your collection, the dreamy, celestial blue of the lotus, the earthy, spicy power of the calamus root, and the quiet, functional beauty of the acacia resin. You have gathered gifts from the water, the earth, and the trees. Each one has a purpose, a role to play in the complex alchemy of the final scent. As you turn to leave the gardens, you feel a sense of connection to this place. A quiet understanding of how the landscape itself is woven into the identity and power of the Kandake. Your basket is heavier now, filled not just with plants, but with potential. And as you walk back towards the silent workshop, you know that this is just the beginning. The most precious ingredients are yet to arrive, carried on the slow, patient footsteps of a caravan from a land that is half history, half myth. Back in the cool stillness of the workshop, you present your basket to the perfumer. She inspects your collection with a practiced eye, nodding in approval at the freshness of the lotus and the quality of the calamus root. She gestures for you to begin processing them, gently laying the lotus petals out on a clean linen cloth to air dry, and using a small, sharp knife to scrape and chop the rhizomes into smaller pieces for faster drying. The work is slow and repetitive, a form of active meditation. As you work, the quiet rhythm of the workshop is broken by a new sound from outside, a low, resonant chorus of bells and the soft, shuffling tread of many feet and hooves. A caravan has arrived. The perfumer sets down her tools, her calm demeanor shifting to one of quiet anticipation. This is a significant event. She leads you out of the workshop and back towards a large, dusty courtyard near the city's main gates. The scene is one of controlled, weary chaos. Dozens of camels are kneeling on the ground, groaning and grumbling with the classic disgruntled attitude of a creature that has just walked 1,000 miles. Their handlers, men with sun-weathered faces and eyes accustomed to squinting at distant horizons, are unstrapping the heavy bales and wooden chests from their backs. The air is thick with the smell of dust, sweat, and tired animals, but underneath it all, a new, powerful fragrance is beginning to permeate the air, a scent of incense, spice, and immense distance. This is the culmination of a journey that took months. A slow trek across the harsh, arid landscapes that separate the Nile Valley from the Red Sea coast. The caravan has come from a port that trades with a distant, almost legendary place the Egyptians called Ta-Netjer, the land of the gods. We know it today as the Land of Punt. Historians still engage in lively debate over the exact location of Punt. Was it in modern-day Somalia, Eritrea, or perhaps even across the sea in Yemen? The evidence is tantalizingly vague, which only adds to its mystique. To the people of Meroë, it was the source of the most sacred and precious substances on earth. It was the ancient world's equivalent of a single, exclusive boutique that sold everything you could ever want. But its location was a closely guarded secret. You watch as a particularly large, well-wrapped bale is carefully lowered from a camel's back. A royal official, clutching a clay tablet and a reed stylus, steps forward to inspect the delivery. The lead merchant, with a theatrical flourish, cuts the ropes and peels back the layers of coarse sacking and leather. As the final layer is removed, a wave of fragrance washes over you, so potent and pure it makes you feel lightheaded. It's the scent of frankincense. The bale is filled with countless small, tear-shaped clumps of pale, yellowish resin. This is not the dusty, mediocre incense sold in marketplaces. This is the highest grade, reserved for temples and royalty. Its scent is complex, with notes of pine, lemon, and a subtle, balsamic sweetness. It was believed to cleanse a space, to please the gods, and to elevate the spirit. Then, another chest is opened. This one contains a different resin, darker and more reddish-brown in color. Myrrh. If frankincense is the scent of the celestial, myrrh is the scent of the earth. Its fragrance is warmer, more bitter, with a strangely medicinal and deeply mournful quality. The Egyptians famously used it in their most elaborate embalming rituals, associating it with healing and the preservation of the body after death. But in perfume, it provides a deep, resonant bass note, an anchor of gravity and seriousness. You remember the old joke about the three wise men. One brought gold, a practical gift. The other two brought a fancy air freshener and some embalming fluid. In the context of ancient values, however, these resins were likely more precious than the gold itself. The official inspects the resins, picking up a few pieces, crushing them between his fingers to test their oil content and purity. There is a quiet negotiation, a murmur of numbers and weights. This transaction is a cornerstone of the Kushite economy. They trade their iron, their gold, and their control of the river trade for these exotic, divine luxuries. It is a perfect circle of commerce. As you stand there, watching these two worlds collide, the dusty, pragmatic world of the caravan and the sacred, scented world of the Kandake, you realize the immense logistical effort required to create a single bottle of perfume. This scent isn't just a mixture of ingredients, it is a map of the known world. A physical manifestation of trade routes, diplomacy, and incredible human endurance. Finally, the transaction is complete. The precious resins are carefully loaded onto smaller carts to be transported to the royal storerooms. A small, but significant, portion is set aside and carried directly towards your workshop. This is your allotment. The perfumer gives you a look that is both a warning and an honor. You are about to work with the most sacred materials of all. As you walk back towards the quiet sanctuary of the workshop, the epic journey of the frankincense and myrrh is over. Their next journey, a transformation from raw resin to liquid magic, is about to begin. Back inside the workshop, the atmosphere has shifted. With the arrival of the frankincense and myrrh, a new level of reverence permeates the room. These are not just ingredients, they are divine essences, and they must be treated with the utmost respect. The perfumer carefully transfers the pale tears of frankincense and the dark nuggets of myrrh from their dusty transit bags into clean, shallow ceramic bowls. For a moment, she simply looks at them, her head bowed slightly, as if offering a silent prayer of thanks for their safe arrival. This isn't just quality control, it's a spiritual communion. She then directs your attention to the tools you will be using. They are laid out neatly on a smooth, dark slate slab, There is no complex machinery here. No gleaming copper stills bubbling away like in an alchemist's fantasy. The tools for processing these precious resins are humble, elegant, and powered by human energy alone. They are instruments of patience. You see a collection of mortars and pestles, each one suited for a different task. One is a large, heavy basalt mortar, its surface worn smooth from centuries of use, perfect for the initial, coarse grinding of the toughest resins. It's the ancient equivalent of a heavy-duty food processor. Beside it is a smaller, more delicate mortar carved from a single piece of veined alabaster, its surface almost translucent. This one is for the final, fine grinding, where a gentle touch is required. You pick up one of the pestles. It's made of polished diorite, a hard, dark stone. It feels cool, heavy, and perfectly balanced in your hand. It's a tool designed for hours of rhythmic, tireless work. The perfumer gestures to the basalt mortar and a small handful of myrrh. Your task is to begin the grinding process. You place the dark, reddish-brown resin into the bowl. As you bring the pestle down for the first time, the sharp crack of the resin breaking echoes in the quiet room. Then, you begin the real work, a slow, steady, circular grinding motion. It's not about brute force, it's about consistent pressure and endless patience. Shush, shush, shush. The sound fills the room. A dry, whispery rhythm. It's a sound that has probably been the backdrop to this workshop for generations. As you grind, the myrrh begins to release its complex fragrance more intensely. The air fills with its warm, bitter, slightly medicinal scent. It's a deeply grounding aroma. Your arm begins to ache, but you fall into the rhythm of the work. You understand now why the perfumer's movements were so practiced and meditative. This isn't just manual labor, it's a discipline. It's a process that forces you to slow down, to focus entirely on the transformation happening in the bowl in front of you. While you are occupied with the myrrh, the perfumer takes up the alabaster mortar and a small quantity of the highest grade frankincense. Her movements are different from yours. They are lighter, more precise. She is not just pulverizing the resin, she is coaxing it into a fine, almost ethereal powder. Her work is accompanied by a softer, higher-pitched shiff of the pestle against the smooth alabaster. The sharp, lemony pine scent of the frankincense rises to meet the earthy bitterness of the myrrh. And the two fragrances begin to dance in the air. A preview of the final perfume. It's a surprisingly complex process. Historians who study ancient industries often point out this reliance on muscle-powered technology. We tend to imagine progress as a straight line towards mechanization. But for millennia, the most sophisticated results were achieved through simple tools combined with immense human skill and endurance. You also notice other tools, ones that hint at different processes. On a shelf, there is a collection of finely woven linen bags. These will be used for maceration and infusion, steeping the ground resins and flowers in oil to extract their scent. You see a set of long, thin bronze rods with flattened ends, perfect for stirring mixtures in tall, narrow-necked jars. And in a corner, you see a simple but effective piece of equipment, a small copper pot with a strangely shaped, tight-fitting lid that has a long, downward-sloping spout. This is a rudimentary still, while the complex art of steam distillation wouldn't be perfected for centuries. Simple forms of distillation were known. By gently heating water with flowers or aromatic woods in this pot, they could collect the scented steam as it condensed in the spout, capturing a hydrosol, or a fragrant floral water. It's the low-tech ancestor of every bottle of rosewater or orange blossom water you've ever seen. The quiet sounds of your grinding, the gentle clink of a ceramic bowl, the soft rustle of drying herbs. This is the true soundtrack of ancient alchemy. It's a world away from the bubbling beakers and dramatic explosions of fiction. This is real magic, slow, patient, and profoundly quiet. After what feels like hours, the myrrh in your mortar has been reduced to a fine, consistent powder. Your shoulder aches with a dull, satisfying throb. The perfumer inspects your work, running a little of the powder between her thumb and forefinger, and gives another one of her subtle, approving nods. She scrapes the powder carefully into a clean ceramic bowl and sets it aside. The first step is complete. But a perfume is more than just a collection of scented dust. It needs a body, a medium to carry the fragrance and allow it to be applied to the skin. It needs a base. You might imagine this base would be some exotic, specially prepared substance, but the reality, as is often the case in history, is far more practical and, dare I say, a little mundane. The perfumer leads you to a different part of the workshop, an area that feels more like a kitchen than a laboratory. Here, the air smells less of divine resin and more of something rich, fatty, and slightly savory. She points to a large, shallow clay pot sitting over a low, smoldering fire of charcoal. This is where the perfume's foundation is made, the primary base for many ancient perfumes, especially the thick, unguent-style ones popular in this region, was animal fat, specifically, purified beef fat, or tallow. This might sound a bit strange to our modern sensibilities, accustomed as we are to sterile, alcohol-based sprays. The idea of rubbing rendered beef fat on your skin as a perfume seems less like a luxury cosmetic and more like something you do on a dare. But in a world without modern chemistry, animal fats were an ideal carrier for scent. They are stable, absorb fragrant molecules readily, and are deeply moisturizing, a welcome bonus in the dry desert climate. It was the ancient world's all-in-one moisturizer and solid perfume stick. The process of preparing it, called rendering, is simple but requires a patient, watchful eye. You watch as the perfumer takes chunks of clean, white beef fat and places them in the pot with a small amount of water. As the pot heats gently, the fat slowly melts and separates from any connective tissue. The key is low, slow heat. If the temperature gets too high, the fat will scorch and develop a roasted, meaty smell, a fragrance that, while perhaps appealing before dinner, is generally not what the Kandake is going for in a personal perfume. A gentle simmering is all that's needed. While the fat is rendering, the perfumer turns to another, more elegant source of oil. She picks up a heavy linen bag filled with what looks like small, dark seeds. These are ben nuts, from the moringa tree, which grew in abundance along the Nile. The oil from these nuts was highly prized in antiquity. It is incredibly stable, meaning it doesn't go rancid easily. And it is almost odorless, making it a perfect, neutral canvas for the perfumer to paint upon with other scents. This was the high-end stuff, the cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil of the ancient perfume world. You are given the task of pressing the oil. The seeds are first lightly crushed in a mortar, just enough to break their shells. Then, the crushed seeds are poured into a thick, sturdy linen bag. The bag is twisted tightly, and then placed between two heavy, flat stones. You use a wooden lever to apply pressure to the top stone. Slowly and steadily. It's hard work. A thin, pale golden liquid, ben oil, begins to seep through the weave of the bag, trickling down into a shallow bowl placed beneath. Each drop feels like a victory. This process yields a relatively small amount of oil, which is why it was so valuable. This oil would likely be used for the most delicate perfumes, or perhaps added to the animal fat base to improve its texture and shelf life. Historians who analyze the residues in ancient perfume jars often find traces of these different lipids. Some jars contain pure moringa oil, others a base of tallow or lard, and many contain a sophisticated blend of different fats and vegetable oils. The perfumer would choose their base depending on the desired consistency and purpose of the final product. A thick unguent for anointing a statue would be different from a lighter, more emollient oil for the Kandake's skin. After a while, the beef fat has completely melted. The perfumer carefully skims the clear, liquid tallow off the top, leaving the water and solid impurities behind. She strains it through several layers of fine linen into a clean clay basin to cool. As it cools, it will solidify into a pure, creamy white, and virtually odorless solid. You look at the results of your work, a bowl of pristine white tallow and a smaller, more precious bowl of gleaming golden ben oil. It's not the most glamorous part of the process, but it's the essential, invisible foundation upon which the entire fragrant masterpiece will be built. You have created the silence into which the music will be played. Now, the true artistry begins. The foundational work is done, the ingredients have been gathered, the resins ground, the oils prepared. It is time to assemble the heart of the perfume. But this is not just any perfume. You are about to participate in the creation of one of the most famous and sacred scents of the ancient world, Kyphi. The name itself is a Greek transliteration of the Egyptian word kapit, and its recipe was so revered that it was famously carved onto the temple walls at Edfu and Philae. While you are in a Kushite workshop, the cultural exchange along the Nile was so profound that this sacred incense perfume was a shared treasure. Though each region undoubtedly had its own unique variations, the perfumer clears the central stone table, wiping it down with a damp cloth until it is immaculate. This is her sacred workspace, her altar. She begins to lay out the ingredients in a series of small, tidy bowls, arranging them in a semicircle. It looks like the setup for a cooking show, but infinitely more serene and consequential. You count them as she lays them out. There are 16 core ingredients in the classic Kyphi recipe, a number rich with symbolic meaning. It's a complex symphony, and each instrument must be played perfectly. First, she takes your painstakingly ground myrrh. Then, the frankincense, its fine powder almost glowing in the dim light. To these, she adds a host of other aromatic treasures. There is the sweet flag root you gathered from the riverbank, now dried and powdered, adding its fresh, spicy kick. There is a bowl of crushed juniper berries, their scent reminiscent of a cool pine forest. Next to it, a powder of a startling cinnamon red color, cassia bark, a spicier, more robust cousin of true cinnamon, which also sits in a neighboring bowl. You see the deep yellow of turmeric root, valued for its color and its earthy, slightly bitter aroma. The perfumer gestures for you to help. Your next task is to take a handful of golden, sticky raisins and pound them into a thick, sweet paste in a clean mortar. Kyphi was unique in that it often included non-aromatic ingredients that provided sweetness and texture. While you work the raisins, the perfumer gently toasts a small amount of the calamus root and some other woody components in a dry pan over the low charcoal fire, a process that deepens and enriches their fragrance. The air in the workshop, already a complex tapestry of scents, becomes even more layered and intoxicating. The sweet smell of the toasting root blends with the sharp spice of the cassia and the deep resonance of the resins. Once the raisin paste is ready, the perfumer adds it to a large, heavy mixing bowl. Then, with a quiet reverence, she begins to add the powdered ingredients. One by one, there is a precise order to this, a secret chemistry known only to her. She adds the frankincense, the myrrh, the cassia, the juniper. She adds a pinch of cardamom for warmth, and a spoonful of powdered orris root, from the iris flower, which has a delicate, violet-like scent and acts as another excellent fixative, just like the gum arabic you collected. Some historians debate whether the honey mentioned in the temple recipes was literal bees' honey or, as you are seeing now, a fruit-based paste like these raisins. Which would be more stable? It's one of those small, delicious details that keeps the past feeling alive and debatable. The dry ingredients are mixed thoroughly. A beautiful, fragrant powder of mottled reds, yellows, and browns. Then comes the liquid. The perfumer doesn't just dump everything in. She begins by adding a small amount of an inexpensive wine, just enough to moisten the powders and begin the process of melding them together. She works the mixture with her hands, kneading it gently as if it were a sacred dough. The wine acts as a solvent, helping to release the aromatic compounds. It's a slow, deliberate process. This is not about speed, it's about intimacy with the materials. After the wine has been fully incorporated, she adds the honey, in this case, actual, dark, fragrant honey collected from wild desert bees, and finally, a generous amount of your freshly rendered and purified beef tallow. She continues to knead, her hands moving with a practiced, rhythmic grace. The mixture transforms from a crumbly powder into a thick, dark, pliable paste. This is the base of the Kyphi. It's not a liquid perfume you would dab behind your ears. It is a solid unguent. Small pellets of this paste could be placed on hot coals to be burned as a sacred incense, filling a temple with thick, fragrant smoke. Or, a small amount could be warmed between the fingers and applied to the skin, where the body's heat would slowly release its complex fragrance throughout the day. You've just helped create something that is simultaneously a perfume, an incense, a medicine, and a prayer. It's the ultimate multi-tool of the ancient sensory world. But the work is not quite finished. The Kandake's version of Kyphi has one final, secret ingredient. The thick, dark, and fragrant paste of the Kyphi now rests in the large mixing bowl. a testament to the careful blending of 16 distinct elements. It is rich, complex, and deeply satisfying. By any standard, it is a finished masterpiece. But it is not the Kandake's masterpiece. Not yet. The perfumer covers the bowl with a damp linen cloth, allowing the scents to begin their slow, harmonious marriage. She then turns and walks to the far corner of the workshop. To a small, heavily carved wooden chest that you hadn't paid much attention to before. It looks ancient, its dark wood polished smooth by generations of hands. This chest is the only object in the room that is locked. From a leather cord around her neck, she produces a small, ornate key made of bronze. The lock clicks open with a soft, satisfying sound. The air of reverence in the room, already palpable, deepens further. This is the inner sanctum, the secret heart of the royal perfume. She lifts the lid of the chest, and for a moment, she is still, looking down into its contents. Then, she reaches in and carefully lifts out a small, unassuming cloth bag. Whatever is inside is clearly precious. She brings the bag back to the central stone table and unties the drawstring. She gently pours the contents into a small, shallow bowl. It is another resin, but it looks unlike any you have seen before. It's not the pale gold of frankincense or the reddish brown of myrrh. These are small, almost black, tear-shaped pellets, with a slightly waxy, matte finish. They look like dark, polished river stones. This is the Kandake's secret note, the ingredient that transforms the universal, sacred scent of Kyphi into her own personal, inimitable fragrance. The identity of this secret resin is a mystery that has been lost to time. A puzzle that archaeologists and botanists can only speculate upon. It was almost certainly a local ingredient, something harvested from the unique biosphere of the Kushite heartland, far from the well-trod trade routes. Perhaps it was the resin of a rare, scrubby desert bush that only bloomed after a specific pattern of rainfall. Or maybe it was a type of opopanax, sometimes called sweet myrrh, but from a very specific, potent local varietal. Historians still search for botanical clues in the artistic depictions of plant life in Meroitic temples, hoping to identify this elusive plant. Its exclusivity was its power. The Romans could buy all the frankincense they wanted, but they could not obtain this. This scent belonged only to the queen. The perfumer places a few of these dark pellets into the small, elegant alabaster mortar, the one reserved for the finest work. She begins to grind them, and the scent that rises from the bowl is extraordinary. It is nothing like the other resins. It has a warm, sweet, honeyed base, but with a strange and captivating top note that is slightly smoky and almost leathery. It is a scent that is both comforting and commanding, feminine and powerful. It's the kind of fragrance that doesn't shout for attention, but makes you lean in closer, unconsciously, to try and decipher its mystery. It is the olfactory equivalent of a confident, knowing smile. Once the secret resin is ground into a fine, dark powder, the perfumer uncovers the bowl of Kyphi paste. She takes a small pinch of the new powder, a surprisingly tiny amount, and sprinkles it over the surface. Then, with a reverence bordering on religious ritual, she kneads it into the mixture. This is the final, masterful touch. She is not overpowering the existing symphony of the Kyphi, she is adding a new, unique voice to the choir. A subtle harmony that changes the entire character of the scent. It's like adding a single, unexpected chord to a familiar song, making it suddenly new and unforgettable. This reminds you of the common historical practice of royalty having a privy seal for documents. This perfume is the Kandake's privy scent, an invisible, unforgeable signature of her presence and power. The process is complete. The perfume, the true perfume of the Kandake, is finished. But like a fine wine, its creation is not just about the mixing. It now requires a period of rest, of quiet transformation. The different molecular compounds, the oils, the resins, the plant essences, they all need time to interact, to mellow, to merge fully into a single, seamless whole. The sharp edges will soften. The individual notes will coalesce into a rich, unified chord. The next stage of the journey requires no work, no grinding, no mixing. It requires only the one ingredient that is often in the shortest supply: patience. The perfume must now be put away to mature in the dark. The final act of creation is complete. But the life of the perfume is just beginning. The perfumer now moves with the gentle, practiced efficiency of someone tidying up after a sacred ceremony. She takes the large bowl of the freshly blended Kyphi paste and brings it to a clean section of the stone table. With her fingers, she begins to scoop out small portions of the dark, fragrant unguent, rolling them into smooth, marble-sized balls. The work is rhythmic and precise, each ball uniform in size and shape. This is the most common form in which Kyphi was used as incense. These small pellets could be easily stored and placed on hot coals one by one, releasing their divine smoke, but a portion of the paste is set aside for a different purpose. This portion will become the Kandake's personal unguent, a solid perfume for her skin. For this, a different kind of aging is required. The perfumer takes several small, beautifully crafted clay jars. They are made of a dense, reddish-brown earthenware, unglazed on the outside to remain porous, but with a thin, smooth glaze on the inside to prevent the precious oils from seeping into the clay itself. These jars are the ancient world's equivalent of high-tech, airtight containers, designed to protect their contents from the two great enemies of perfume, light and air. She carefully packs the soft, fragrant paste into each jar, pressing it down firmly to eliminate any air pockets. She fills them almost to the brim, leaving just enough space at the top for a seal. The sealing process is its own small ritual. She takes a disc of clean linen, dips it into the bowl of still warm, liquid ben oil you helped press earlier, and places it directly onto the surface of the perfume. This layer of oil creates a perfect airtight barrier. Then, she places a fitted clay lid onto the jar. Finally, she takes a small lump of soft beeswax, warms it with her fingers, and meticulously presses it into the seam between the lid and the jar, creating a final, hermetic seal. Nothing can get in, and more importantly, none of the precious, volatile scent molecules can get out. Now, the jars must be stored. The perfumer carries them, one by one, to a small, windowless alcove at the back of the workshop. The air in this alcove is noticeably cooler and smells of damp earth and stone. It is a small, subterranean cellar, dug partially into the ground to maintain a stable, cool temperature year-round. It is the perfect environment for maturation. She places the jars on a low stone shelf in the deepest, darkest part of the cellar. And now, the waiting begins. This period of maturation, or maceration as it's technically known, is crucial. It's a silent, invisible process. Inside the darkness of the jars, a slow, magical transformation is taking place. The sharp, individual notes of the spices, the cassia, the cardamom, the sweet flag, are mellowing, their edges softening as they infuse into the fatty base. The deep, resonant bass notes from the myrrh and the secret Kushite resin are slowly, inexorably blooming, binding all the other scents together. The sweet notes of the raisin paste and honey are integrating, lending their warmth to the entire composition. It's a process that cannot be rushed. Some ancient texts suggest that certain perfumes were left to mature for months, even years. The longer they sat, the more harmonious and profound their fragrance became. You think of the modern world's obsession with instant gratification. A perfume is designed in a lab, mass-produced in a factory, and shipped to a store within weeks. This ancient process is the complete opposite. It is a testament to a different understanding of time, one that is cyclical, patient, and deeply connected to natural processes. It's like the difference between a cheap, mass-produced cheese and a wheel of artisanal cheddar that has been aged for 5 years in a quiet cellar. Both are cheese, but one is a mere product, while the other is a story. The perfume resting in these jars is a story of the river, the desert, the caravan, and the quiet, patient hands that brought it all together. While the main perfume ages, the perfumer takes the small, rolled pellets of incense Kyphi and lays them out on a fine mesh screen to dry and harden slightly. This incense would be used more immediately, burned daily in the temples and in the queen's private chambers. It's the everyday version, the scent that sanctifies the ordinary moments of royal life. But the jars in the cellar, they are reserved for the most important occasions. They are the Kandake's armor, her crown, her declaration of divinity. For that, they must wait. The perfumer hangs a heavy curtain over the entrance to the cellar, plunging the aging perfume into absolute darkness. The workshop falls silent once more. Its work done for now. It is a silence filled with anticipation. The quiet hum of molecules slowly dancing into a perfect, final alignment. Weeks turn into months. The seasons shift outside the cool, dim walls of the workshop. The relentless summer sun gives way to a milder, though still brilliant, light. The Nile swells with the floodwaters from the Ethiopian highlands, depositing a fresh layer of life-giving black silt along its banks. Just as it has for millennia. Inside the workshop, the quiet, patient work continues. New batches of ingredients are gathered and processed. But the small, sealed jars in the cellar remain untouched, their silent transformation ongoing. Then one day, the perfumer receives a summons. A message arrives from the Kandake's chief handmaiden. The queen will be presiding over a major religious festival in 2 days' time. An important ceremony to honor the lion god Apidimak, seeking his blessing for a prosperous year and victory over their enemies. For this, she will require a new vessel of her sacred unguent. The time of waiting is over. A palpable sense of purpose returns to the workshop. The perfumer goes to the dark cellar and, with a quiet reverence, selects one of the aged jars. She brings it out into the soft light of the main room and places it on the central stone table. The beeswax seal is still perfect, the clay unblemished. She carefully scrapes away the wax and gently pries open the lid. A wave of fragrance is released, but it is different from the scent of the freshly mixed paste. The sharp edges are gone. The individual notes have merged into a single, seamless, and unbelievably rich aroma. The sweetness of the honey and raisins, the spiciness of the cassia and calamus, the deep resonance of the myrrh and the secret resin, they are all still there. But they no longer feel like separate entities. They have become one. The scent is deep, warm, and profoundly complex. It smells of power, divinity, and the earth itself. The maturation has been a success. Now, the finished perfume must be transferred into a vessel worthy of the queen. The crude earthenware storage jar will not do. The perfumer retrieves another, smaller box from a high shelf. She opens it to reveal a collection of small, exquisite containers. These are the final perfume pots, the ancient equivalent of a crystal flagon from a high-end Parisian boutique. They are works of art in their own right. Some are carved from luminous, banded alabaster, its creamy white stone polished until it is smooth as silk and cool to the touch. Others are made of a material called faience, a non-clay ceramic-like substance made of crushed quartz, glazed in a brilliant, jewel-toned turquoise or deep lapis blue. These were a hallmark of Egyptian and Nubian craftsmanship. She selects a small, elegant faience pot, no bigger than the palm of her hand, glazed in a stunning shade of Nile blue. It is decorated with delicate black lines forming a geometric pattern. Using a small, spatula-like tool carved from polished hippo ivory, she begins the painstaking process of decanting the perfume. She carefully scoops the precious, dark unguent from the storage jar and transfers it, bit by bit, into the beautiful blue vessel. She works with intense concentration, ensuring not a single fleck is wasted. Historians and archaeologists love finding these little pots. Sometimes, miraculously, they are still sealed, and the faint, ghostly remnants of the scented oils and resins inside can be analyzed, giving us our most direct clues about what these ancient fragrances were actually made of. It's like finding a 2,000-year-old message in a bottle. A message written in the language of scent. Once the small faience pot is filled, she anoints its stopper, also carved from faience, with a drop of pure ben oil before fitting it snugly into the opening. The vessel is then wiped clean with a soft linen cloth until it gleams. She places the finished product, this container of liquid gold and fragrant power, onto a small, carved wooden tray. It sits there, small and unassuming, yet representing the culmination of months of labor, a journey of 1,000 miles, and the secrets of a kingdom. It is ready. You are given the honor of carrying the tray. You follow the perfumer out of the workshop, back through the sun-dappled courtyards of the royal compound, towards the queen's private chambers. The guards at the doorway, who would normally stop anyone, recognize the perfumer and the sacred object she accompanies, and they step aside without a word. You enter a large, airy room, its walls decorated with painted frescoes of river scenes and mythical animals. The Kandake is there, surrounded by her handmaidens, preparing for the ceremony. She is a powerful, imposing figure. Her hair intricately braided and adorned with gold rings. She turns as you enter, and her eyes fall upon the small blue pot on the tray. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touches her lips. The perfumer bows low, presenting the offering. The journey of the perfume is complete. It has reached its destination. It is now ready to fulfill its ultimate purpose, to anoint a queen and commune with a god.